Hey Internet, I'm simonsquibb, your host at the Good Luck Club podcast. Our mission is to help anybody out there that's thinking of starting a business do just that. Equally, if you've started a business and are struggling, maybe you need a little bit of inspiration and knowledge. And we hope by interviewing some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs and change makers that you'll get the knowledge you need to become the person you want and turn your business into that dream company. I personally have started 17 companies from scratch and have invested in over 65 startups. When I sat down and analysed how I did it, I discovered a secret. It was all luck. I'm here to tell you, in my opinion, without luck, it ain't gonna work. Each week, I will discuss with my guests this theory and see if luck is a skill as I feel it is. I hope you enjoy our episode this week. Welcome to this week's episode of the Good Luck Club podcast. My guest today is entrepreneur Hayley Peacock. She's the founder and head of school of Atelier 21 Future School. Hayley, welcome to the show.
Hello.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I wonder if you could start off by kindly introducing yourself to our audience.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Hayley. I am an entrepreneur and an educator. My background is in running a group of nurseries in early years. So, looking after children between 0 and 5 and developing a group of nurseries in my area. And most recently, I, about a year ago, decided to start a progressive school. And so we are now 6 weeks away from our new school opening in September. And yeah, that's where I am. I've got 4 children. I'm married and I live in West Sussex, and I'm quite tired at the moment. So I've been working very hard.
Thank you for your honesty. Yeah, I mean, it's that sounds amazing. I'd like to get into the school philosophy a little bit in a short time. But before we dive into the details of what you're doing, I always like to ask guests to define what success is to them so my audience can understand how you view the world.
So, yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think success to me, I think if I really kind of unpack it, obviously, you need to be making a living, and success needs to be able to support your life, your family. But that aside, actually, for me, the success of the business is how much joy I'm taking from it. And when I'm taking the most joy is when other people in my organisation are really thriving and really loving being part of it. When I see my staff, really kind of get really bought in and they really fall in love with what we're doing, that's the point where everything seems to be quite magical. And that to me is a real marker of success because it's the most fun and I'm having the best time doing it.
How do you stay in that state of enjoying the business? Because I know for a lot of my listeners, finding running their own business can be pretty hard. How do you ensure the joy? Yeah,
oh gosh, please don't let you think that I have been in this heightened state of joy for the last 10 years. I really haven't. I mean, the first 3 years, honestly nearly broke me. I mean, in fact, it did sort of break me. I had 2 breakdowns actually. And it was completely horrendous. I had 3 children under the age of 5, 2 of which had been twins that had been born extremely premature, which was very stressful, very ill for a long time. And at the point when they were 18 months old, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll start my own business. This is a great idea. And of course, it was actually a terrible idea. And about a year later, I became extremely poorly. But, I battled through it and I don't regret it. But the first few years, of any new business, I think, are just really, really tough. There's such hard work because your learning curve is so incredibly tough and so stiff. I hadn't managed people properly before in any really formal way. I certainly hadn't run a business. I knew nothing about nurseries at all. And that was a very interesting combination. And I had a huge amount of responsibility at home. So all of that together, was very difficult. And I remember getting to about the 3-year mark and waking up, and I really remember clearly standing by my bed, getting ready for, yet another day and thinking to myself, when is it going to calm down? When am I going to feel like I'm not fighting fires every single day? But I sort of really still had that vision, that belief, that fire that, that time would come and it would, and it's not like I hadn't had loads of fun on the way. I had, but it just was really tough. And I'd say it kind of after that point, sort of 3 years in, between the 3 and 5 year point, it started to get really fun because we started to, you get the team you need, you settle in, you've picked the wrong people, they've either left you or you've got rid of them, and you've got your team around you, and then things start working on their own. That's the difference, is you don't have to go in every day and start the engine, put the petrol on, pump the gas type thing, because the other people start to do that and they start to breathe your values through everything they're doing. And so then you get the time back in the headspace to think, right, let's do some really cool things. Let's do some innovative things. Let's push the boundaries a bit more. And that's the bit that I get the most fun from, because I'm a creator, I'm a visionary.
Thank you.
I'm not that great at the admin. My weakness is that some of the admin, but in terms of creating things, that's the thing I find most fun. So it hasn't always been fun.
Well, I think the honesty you're sharing there means a lot. I think for my audience, that's what they need to hear. And I think, I actually say something similar. I always tell people it's almost like for the first 2 years of any business, it's a bit like going to prison. I've never been to prison, but conceptually, like you've got to just completely get into it and accept that that's going to be completely your life. And then you can come out the other end and appreciate not being in prison anymore.
I think that's it, isn't it? Because gratitude, you get in life, you have gratitude because of not just what you have, but also what you don't have, and sometimes what you don't have anymore. And that's the thing, is that if you haven't really experienced that 100% of the time, constant, awful pressure on you, that just is relentless, when that relieves, it is just wonderful. Totally. And it's just lovely, isn't it? You can't really describe it to anyone, I don't think.
Totally. Actually, I say I've never been to prison, but I must be the same. When you've been in prison for 5 years and you get released, you just appreciate being outside and free, the basics.
Completely. I think we're already really putting loads of people off.
I think so. I think we're saying it's worse than going to prison, starting a business, which is completely the opposite purpose of this podcast. So thank you, Hayley. That's awesome.
Yeah, sorry.
No, but I think no. To be honest, I think it's real, and I think it's true, and I think what you're saying, and I think it's the truth that getting into business, it's not about being perfect all the time, but it is about building something meaningful over time that matters to you. And I think what you're saying, and I think it's true, is that if anyone listening that's thinking of starting a business, don't take it lightly. It's going to be an intense experience, but that intense experience is in fact where the joy comes from. Because later, as it works, as you're saying, year 3, year 4, you're like, wow, now it's actually working. That sense of accomplishment is, I think, 95% of the planet never feel it.
I completely agree with you. I mean, it's the biggest high. It's the biggest high. Other than, I've got, a few great, huge highs in my life. And one of them is some of the accomplishments that, we've made at work and, in the business, because it's a thrill. It's a thrill because it's so risky. So it's a bit like, doing that huge roller coaster and getting right to the precipice, and then it's going really slowly and you're sort of terrified. But then, of course, when you get round it and you stop, you think, oh my God, we really did that. And it's really working. And people really want, what we've got to offer. And also the people I employ are really happy. They're having they're enjoying what they're doing. They're getting life fulfillment out of it. This is so much more than just paying them to do something. And that is where, for me, that's where the magic and the joy happens. Because for other people, it will be different triggers, but for me, it's definitely about the sort of personal side of it and creating something, like you say, something meaningful that means something to you, but to other people.
How did you get through those first 2 years? I mean, I always talk about partners being an important ingredient, for example, and their support and allowing you to do crazy things, and maybe even put them second for a while. But, what's your opinion on what gets you through the hard moments?
100% my wife, she is just an absolute rock to this whole process. She's also worked in the business for a long time. So we weren't together in the first 2 years. I had a different partner who was also, fantastic at supporting me. 100% in all my, both my relationships over the last 10 years, which have spanned my business career, it's definitely been that the other person has has understood that this is something that if you let me do is very much going to impact everybody, and we've all got to kind of accept that. And actually you have to have those conversations up front, 100%. It's always been very much understood that although my wife is employed by me, actually, that she understands that she will, like the rest of the team, they will bring ideas. They will sometimes really badger me to change things or make a really strong case for something. And I'll go away and I'll think about it. And occasionally I'll come back and say, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not, we're doing it my way. And they just say, okay, that's fine. We understand. 9 times out of 10, I'll probably do it their way. And so I think, having that understanding person behind you is just absolutely critical. And also in my case, medication. Medication helped in the first 2 years because, it really was, I don't know how honest you want me to be, but it was very, very stressful. And, there were days where my ex-partner would literally deliver me to the doctors on a Saturday and just, put me in the chair and I would just be in pieces. And the doctor would say, you have to take a break. You have to stop. And I'd say, I can't. And it's not because I didn't want to, but, you physically can't. You physically, if you're in those early stages, you don't have the option to just say, right, I'm getting off the bus for a bit. I need to sign myself off sick. You don't have that option. You just have to find a way through. And bit by bit you do. So my parents were great. They supported me loads. My partner, and sometimes a bit of, other sort of help. But, one foot in front of the other. And before you know it, you see the light and you get there. I've got a bit of a phrase that I've developed over 10 years, and that's don't worry, just work. Because I'm a huge worrier and, I can suffer from anxiety, which was actually triggered by those early experiences of poor mental health due to stress. And so I'm a bit susceptible to anxiety now. And so, I've learned a lot about how it works and how it works for me and how to manage it. And whenever I can feel myself becoming, feeling very overwhelmed by the task ahead, I just try and repeat this mantra, don't worry, just work. Because actually the worrying is just the waste of energy, and the work is the productive thing that's going to get you on the other side of it. Doesn't always work, but I try.
It's a good mantra. I think we should make a T-shirt up. I got a thing in the podcast recently where every guest says stuff that I just think we need to make into T-shirts and give to everybody. And don't worry, just work. I also think talking about mental health is very important. And frankly, this isn't something that just affects entrepreneurs. I mean, I know a lot of people that have very stressful jobs that also find it, incredibly difficult to manage. And so I think generally, even myself, I definitely feel like I've gone through stages of just complete burnout and not even realizing it. And I think,
completely.
Not recognizing if you have physical symptoms, then somehow that's actually good. People take it more seriously. But if you just can't explain why you feel tired, for example, and you're just worried about whatever cash flow, whatever it is, it's not recognized as a real problem. It's almost like, well, you're an entrepreneur, it's your own fault.
Yeah, that is, you're right. That's absolutely right.
If you don't like the doctor saying to you there, well, if you don't like it, just stop working, as if that's going to solve the problem. Actually, it probably won't.
No, it won't.
It's so somehow working through it does. I started working at 15 and didn't stop working non-stop for 20 years, in part because I was running away from the fact my father had died and I was sad. So somehow work was an enjoyable escape from that hard moment, right? It came back to bite me later in life and I've now had to deal with it, but somehow working through it made it better, right?
Yeah.
So
I think the other thing is, I'm sure you want to move on with more questions, but one of the things I do think it's so important to learn to take the breaks. And actually I still struggle with that. I still struggle with enormous guilt about not working, which is completely self-imposed. So, but I think, good entrepreneurs, I think some of us as entrepreneurs are fueled by a sense of self-doubt. Like it kind of pushes us on, we love the challenge, but there's this like fire of, kind of like you can't fail, so you've got to step forward. And if you take a break from that, it's almost like you're inviting that doubt to just sit with you for longer because working through it is easier. So for me, taking a break is a really difficult thing for me to do. And I have to physically leave the country, or at least leave my house and holiday somewhere else other than my home. Otherwise, I don't switch off, which is why I very rarely have time off just at home to be around and do a bit of DIY, which is why I never do any. Because otherwise I'm just working in my head the whole time. I have to physically remove myself. And I've got a lot better at understanding that, that is so important. And my dad's been a huge help there. I mean, I remember him telling me various times where I was very close to burnout yet again, where he said to me, Hayley, you've got to think of it as though, you are like a top performing race car. That's what you've got to think of yourself as. And if you rag that race car round and round the track every day, day after day, month after month, what's going to happen? I was like, well, obviously it's going to break down. He's like, yeah, the wheels are going to fall off. The engine's going to stop working. Stuff's going to go wrong. People don't treat high performing race cars like that. Now, that all might sound a bit silly and a bit arrogant. I'm comparing myself. It was his analogy. But I like the idea that actually this, without the person at the top performing well, you're going to impact other people in a negative way. So you have to take the responsibility seriously. And that means looking after yourself and putting yourself in the pit stop time, enough. And that is still something I find hard, but I think
it's kind of like a conflict, isn't it? With the two sayings, don't worry, just work, and then like get a service. Like there's like the back of the t-shirt and the front of the t-shirt. It's like
I didn't claim to have the answer, Simon. I'm still working it out myself.
I think that's why I do this podcast show, because I think it's interesting to have the debate and discuss it. Because I think for a lot of people, a lot of my listeners out there, for example, thinking of starting a business, they hear these sound bites, like work hard and you'll get luckier in life, or they hear these basics, basic elements, and the nuance of it is actually what is important to talk about. And it's important to understand. Definitely. That's why I love to talk to people like you that are honest and open and share, because I think people need to know that this journey, whatever journey, or even working for someone else, the journey will not be straightforward.
Absolutely.
And there is, working for yourself does bring another layer. It does, because you've got other people to be responsible for, which does bring a whole new wave of worry. Right, you've got to pay 100%. Their bills. They've got their mortgages to pay. They're relying on that income to feed their family. Right, so there's just one extra layer, which I think is also what inspires you. Right, like you're talking about there with your partner, working with them for a few years, you end up falling in love because you've worked together so much. It can also end up literally being that way if you work together with people, right, and you're responsible for them. So anyway, it's an interesting yin yang approach. I wanted to ask you a little bit about whether or not you think entrepreneurs are born or bred.
I think that everybody has the capacity to be an entrepreneur. I think everybody has the capacity to develop the skills to run a business, be entrepreneurial in their spirit and their approach to life. So, for example, at our school, we're looking to we have a continuum stream as part of our curriculum. It makes up 1/5 of our curriculum, which is developing entrepreneurial skills and spirit and characteristics. That doesn't mean to say that we're looking for every pupil to leave the school at 16 and be, have their sights on being an entrepreneur. That's not what we're saying. But the skills of an entrepreneur, the ways of looking at the world, the lens in which you see life and opportunities around you, allows you to be more resourceful, more resilient, more flexible of thinking, more creative. And those are the things that create opportunities, bring joy, and allow you to make great choices in life. So it's about developing the thinking habits that are synonymous with being an entrepreneur, rather than saying everyone should be an entrepreneur, because actually, it wouldn't work if everyone was an entrepreneur, for a start. And secondly, not everybody is up for the pressure that we're talking about. Yes, some people thrive on it and it has an impact, but not everybody, that doesn't suit everyone. But it doesn't mean to say that you can't develop those key skills, that actually those are the things that help you to navigate not just business life, but marriages, friendships, managing relationships with your parents, with your children. It's that reflective nature, that those kind of components of self-regulation and, growth mindset and all those things that we kind of, think of when we think of good progressive entrepreneurship. I think actually those things are the things that get you through life and get you through relationships, not just about business and making money.
I could not agree more. And I absolutely cannot think of anyone better than you to start a school like this. It's absolutely, I mean, I know you because I read about the school. I was looking for schools for my own son, just for the audience to know. And I've literally scoured the whole country looking for people who are running schools with this philosophy. And it's rare. And actually, I think what you're also teaching is empathy. You're teaching, it's got nothing to do with like entrepreneurship as such. Like you say, I left school at 15 and started a company. I certainly don't advocate that everyone should do that. So I agree with your point. That's not the point. I think the skills are very useful in whatever you decide to do in your life, right? And that open thinking, that collaborative mindset, you know, where I often feel like when I hire people that I'm working for them.
Absolutely.
You know, and a lot of people don't perceive it that way. They perceive, you're employing people, so you're the boss. Right, but that's a construct that's only really within the corporate world. In the real world, like I'm permanently trying to convince people to stay in my company, right? And that's a skill.
Yes,
that's a skill that's very transferable into all parts of life, right? So
absolutely. It's all those, and I think that, you know, if we're to sort of really sum that up, because I'm conscious not to give the impression that Atelier 21 is about creating these, you know, future business leaders or future entrepreneurs, because actually it isn't. You know, entrepreneurship is just one element of what we're looking to do. But kind of key skills and habits of mind, learning powers and things like that, you know, absolutely is, alongside academic mastery, you know, outdoor learning, etc. But I think really the real kind of core reason behind wanting to set up the school is that life is so uncertain. This is the thing, is that we've kind of given young people and children this message all through life that there's a set pathway, and it was the pathway that we were told. You know, it's not told you directly, but the messages are: go to school, get good grades, you know, go to university, get a great job, life is sorted. And by the way, you'll meet a fab person to marry along the way, have 2.4 children and a house and, you know, and some great holidays. But of course, that's just not how it works at all. And actually, what might have been a fairly certain path a long time ago, probably 40, 50 years ago, is definitely not a certain path now. And more to the point, it's a good thing it's not a certain path, because there are loads of other opportunities. There are so many other ways to work out, how do I want to spend my time, and how much money do I actually need and want to create that thriving life. And so our school is about showing young people through, you know, many different means and a construct of a curriculum that is very dynamic, and also largely resting on independent and self-directed learning, that life is uncertain and that you need to get comfortable on the wobbly stool. That is my kind of analogy, is that, you know, life is about sitting on a stool where it never quite sits straight on the floor. You've got one leg always shorter than the other, and it will naturally always move around a little bit as you sit on it. Well, get comfortable, because that's life. And if you can get comfortable on the wobbly stool, you're going to be fine, because you'll always work out what to do when you don't know what to do. You'll find a way to scan the situation and create the next step for yourself. And that's actually, you know, what I want to reform. I want my school to be a beacon of reformed education that allow young people to thrive and compete in the certain thing we can be certain of, is that it's an uncertain 21st century and we don't know what's around the corner. And now couldn't be even more of a demonstration than any other time with coronavirus, COVID that's just hit us. So yeah.
I wish your school was around when I was young. I hated school. Mm-hmm. And then listening to your vision, I literally want to go back in time and go to your school. So the only way I can do that is send my own son there. So we'll be talking about that later. But I just wondered, out of interest, are your parents entrepreneurs?
One is, so my dad worked for himself, you know, and has done a lot of different things. He's been everything from, you know, a salesman, he's run his own company, to spent a long time being a professional gambler, actually, and very successful at it. So I've had a lot of influences for that kind of like making your own way. My mum, although she wasn't an entrepreneur, she did a lot of different things. She went from being in computers in the 80s to then retraining as a dairy farmer in the 90s, to then going and retraining as a teacher age 50, and now, you know, has worked as a teacher and is now currently working in the NHS, actually. So the idea, there's always been a strong message that if you want to do it, just go and do it. you don't need to worry about whether you can or can't. Just jump in, find a way, you work it out along the way. So that, I think, has been definitely a big influence on me.
I always feel like when I look at schooling, there's always a disconnect between the parents' responsibility and the school's responsibility. I see a thread there that's sometimes missing. Like, my parents used to send me to schools if it was the school's responsibility to turn me into a successful business person, for example, right? I mean, but most of your influence is still going to come from your home environment, isn't it? Do you find that? Is that a true statement? Is there a disconnect, or am I?
Yeah, I mean, a huge disconnect. You only have to look at children who are living in disadvantage to see that, they go to school with these people that are, desperate to try and improve their life chances and, to improve the future that they might have. And then they're handed back, sometimes into a situation where that's the opposite of what they're trying to achieve is actually happening around them. So those influences are always going to be so much stronger. And so one of the tricks that I think gets missed is that, and it's not each individual school's fault, it's the system's fault, is that there's just not enough emphasis in education on relationships. And if there was more emphasis on relationships, because actually relationships is everything in life, it's everything you could imagine. So if there was more emphasis on relationships, and not just in a kind of tokenistic teaching PHSE type thing, then like a really organic weaved into the fabric of the culture of the school life, focus on relationships, then we would find more ways to bridge parents and their involvement in school. And it's through bringing parents in that you will make a difference to how they then parent and educate and influence outside of school. So we have in our school, there will be a lot of emphasis on bringing the parents in, so that you're not just getting the pupils buy-in in the way we think, the skills we want to develop, the conduct that we're looking for, etc. But actually, you're getting that buy-in from the parents, because otherwise we will face a situation where that social conditioned idea of what school is, despite the fact that they've chosen our school for all the merits that we're saying it's going to have, and it's progressive and it's dynamic and it's not the chalk and talk and there's no lines of desks and all the rest of it, project-based learning, outdoor learning. Actually, those socially conditioned ideas of what is learning, they sit in the back of all of us and they nag away, and they make us doubt what we're doing. And so if we don't bring the parents on our journey to keep exploring what we're doing, innovative ways of teaching, of learning, how self-directing learning, pupils directing their own learning is so generative for different sorts of skills. What will happen is those nagging social conditioned ideas of when are they going to sit down and do some learning, or how do you know they're making progress, or where's the test or whatever, they will start coming up as challenges. And so, having parents right close to you along the journey is really important, I think, particularly if you're doing something different, which we are.
How hard has it been to start a school in this ilk? It feels like, without getting into trouble and having a go at the system that's in place, but it feels like there's a lot of resistance to an evolution like this. That's my perception. What's the reality?
I don't think. I mean, absolutely. I am very square and centre about having a go at the system that's there, not in an aggressive way, but there's absolutely I 100% believe that the system is broken and desperately needs reforming. When you unpack actually some of the cultural norms in schools, it's insane. Some of the things are completely insane. We go about life calling each other Simon and Hayley all day long, despite the fact that we've never met. If you're introduced to a CEO these days, most of the time they'd say, "Hi, my name's Dave." They wouldn't say, "I'm Mr. So-and-so." That stuff's gone out. Yet we expect children from 4 to 16 to call their educators, these really important people that they're supposed to be modelling life from and taking all this influence from, sir, and miss. I mean, how dark ages is that? We strap them up in little jackets and, make them look like they work in Canary Wharf. Why? Why are we doing that? We're doing it because we've always done it and we've never questioned it. There's so many things. There's so many social kind of cultural things about school that I think are a real problem. But the biggest thing that's such a problem is the huge disconnect from what happens when you teach children individual subjects in silos, by having English lesson, geography lesson, maths lesson, science lesson, and they're all independent from each other, and there's no understanding of how that's brought together and is connected to not only to each other, the subject matter to each other, but also how children connect that to the real world. And that's why I'm such a fan of project-based learning, because children buy in and they understand why they're learning something. Whereas if you just go, 6 different subjects a day, it becomes very hard to stay motivated about why you're learning this stuff, because nobody ever tells you why.
I don't think all the people I've spoken to within the education ecosystem that are aware say the same as you. It's broken. It needs fixing. But why? I'm not just saying this because I've got you here. Honestly, I can only see I would say a handful of people doing what you're doing in the whole of the UK. I mean, even globally, I think I can name a handful. Again, like the Barley School, the Green School in Bali, for example, would be one of those schools for me. I see that they're trying to do something different, and
sure.
but it feels like there's a huge amount of resistance. Why?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, just let me say that there actually are, there is a really keen contingent of people that are doing really progressive things in the UK. There just aren't so many of them that you may have heard about them, but and that's why you referred to sort of handful. But actually, there are a lot of people that are doing things, but they come in all different shapes and sizes. So there's a lot of early years owners who are doing really kind of taking from progressive approaches. There's a lot of Scandinavian influences with Forest School. There are loads of fantastic homeschool education groups cropping up all over the place, and some progressive schools. So it's definitely going to change. I really feel that in the next 10 years or so, well, maybe a little longer than that, but it'll start to become a case of the choices are state school, private school, progressive school. Whereas at the moment, the choices are state school, private school. And by the way, there's a few people on the fringe who occasionally start these crazy little schools. They're a bit hippie-ish, and they're alternatives. And they're the ones that have, a bit of resistance to, I think, from the average Joe, because they don't understand. They don't understand what they're doing. And people don't know what they don't know. That's the thing. So you have to show them what they don't know. You have to break it down. You have to make it really, really clear. You have to say, you've always accepted this. And yes, of course, your little Charlie, will be fine at a regular school. Nobody's saying they won't. However, let's look at how it looks over here. Because actually, imagine all these types of skills and values and, cultural influences that Charlie will pick up along the way, and he'll still get a rocking set of GCSEs. But the problem is that it's that social conditioning. Parents are too concerned about, will my child go on, and oh my God, please just promise me they're going to get a job and be okay. Because that's the deep-seated fear, really. And so they all want them to be happy. Whenever I ask parents, what do you really want, out of education? They always say, I just want them to be happy. But obviously, I want them to be able to, compete in life. And so what we need to keep showing parents is that actually we can help children grow their own intelligence. And by growing their own intelligence, they will be able to deal with any situation. They will be able to find the pathway and the opportunity in any situation, in any direction that they want to go. So rather than sort of thinking, oh my God, please just give them these tools, make sure they get this GCSE, make sure they get into a university because, life will be fine after that. Well, of course, that's absolutely no guarantee that it'll be fine at all. What you want is for them to have a toolbox of habits of mind, of ability to be flexible, to understand the situation, to scan it, to make the best of it, to be resourceful, to be able to collaborate, to be able to network, find the right people that are going to help you at the right time. Those tools are so much more generative and valuable and long-lasting than just a set of GCSEs. GCSEs is the thing we need to do, absolutely. But it shouldn't be what the whole of a child's school experience is ultimately leading to. It shouldn't be all about that. And at the moment in the mainstream sector, I feel it is. You start with SATs at year 2, they're taught to the test for that. Then you've got SATs at year 6, they're taught to the test for that, and that becomes the marker for their flight path of success right into GCSEs. It just shouldn't be like that. Their education is a huge part of their childhood, and it should be respected as so.
It's fascinating, and it's very sensitive for me because I see for my own child, I want him to be happy. Then you also don't want them left behind. So somehow there's an image of things like homeschool, for example, where somehow they're going to miss out on something, or you don't want to hurt them.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because
difficult.
I honestly believe that homeschool, a really, really good homeschool experience, is one of the best educations you could possibly have. And, what our school is taking, I think, what we're trying to do is take, if you had the absolute best homeschool mum and dad who created this really rich environment for learning, and they were questioning and they were challenging, and they made learning experiential, and they contextualized learning, made it meaningful by real world experiences and project based. Take that idea and then make a school into it. Well, that's Atelier 21. That's what we're trying to achieve. But I completely agree with you that the homeschool concept is so misunderstood, because we all have been trained to believe that there's a monopoly on knowledge. We've been trained to believe that there's a set of knowledges, that there's a set of things that need to be known in life. And of course, that's nonsense. You could question, why are we still teaching World War II when we've got 20 years of, Afghan war right there that we've all lived through? Why are we still teaching that? Because the monopoly on knowledge says that's more important, because it's just always the way it's been.
And I think to add, we could have a whole podcast just talking about education. Maybe this is...
Let's do it.
I do find it fascinating. Maybe we should have a whole separate discussion just about it, because I start thinking about, like, for example, you mentioned earlier about the school uniforms. And it's interesting because I've seen lots of different schools for my son and different philosophies. One school is like, we don't wear school uniforms because we're all individual, which is awesome. And I go to another school, we all wear school uniforms so that we don't have to compete with each other about what we're wearing every day. And, so suddenly there's a conflicting philosophy, and both of which can convince, depending on what type of person you are, that's the right strategy. And I think the nuance of it is missing. I think that's my view. It's like, well, the bullying's still happening. Well, you're actually not done there. You tried to solve the problem by creating a system saying wear a school uniform, because as if that's going to stop bullying. But actually, that's not going to stop bullying. That's just going to create another area of bullying. So they're not the cause problem. Nonsense.
It's a complete nonsense construct. If you actually look into the history of why children wear school uniforms, it goes right back to, sort of 18th century, when putting children in a school with a uniform was a sign of sign of status. So that's all it is. It's just gone back to this idea of status. It's nothing more than that. As you say, bullying happens in all different forms. There's much bigger problems bullying online. It's certainly not necessarily about, the trainers that they wore to school that day, although I'm sure that does crop up, but there are just bigger fish to fry. And uniform is another very outdated and dangerous message. This is the thing that upsets me, is that, we're saying we want children to be independent and free thinking and innovative, and we want them to go out and do good things and change the world. But by the way, make sure you all look the same for the first 18 years. Like, clothes and style and fashion, etc. It's a huge extension of our personality. It's part of our identity, and children should be able to experiment with that. And as long as it doesn't affect their learning, what difference does it make? So, lots of our families are asking me at the moment, what can we wear to school? And I say, I don't care if you come in a tutu and a Mohican, as long as it doesn't affect your learning and it doesn't offend anyone else.
Great. Well, I think my son will probably take you up on that, I think. But I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you got into all of this. Have you worked for someone else before? What's your history, quickly?
Sorry, I think you just got my rumbly tummy then. My history is that I went to university, I studied film, television and theatre, and then I had a career sort of in television and media for a few years until I was about 28, which is when I first started my first business, which was a nursery business. And so I worked as everything from a TV, behind the scenes TV researcher, production coordinator, worked on a few low budget films. I even did a little bit of broadcasting myself. And so, yeah, I was kind of developing, but at the same time, I'd had 3 children between the ages of 24 and 27. So, that was a huge, that was a challenge within my career, obviously, but also a wonderful welcome to my life. But it did mean that, things were a bit less kind of linear in terms of a career path. And then it got to the point where I decided I wanted to work in news. And I thought, I really love the idea of working in news, doing something quite serious. And so I went for a job reading the news at a local radio station. And, they kind of looked at me and said, right, you've got 3 children under 5. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, okay, so you can jump on a train and go to Scotland tomorrow then. And I was sort of like, no, can't really do that. So I realised very quickly that my TV and my media career was going to be over very, very shortly. And thought, well, what can I do? I need childcare. I need to earn enough money to actually, go to work. I need to earn enough money for childcare. I love the idea of running my own business one day. And, this big kind of passion of mine working in television and media was going to be over. So starting my own nursery seemed to sort of tick all those boxes. And also by that point, having had young children and getting into a bit of journalism and things, I could feel that I was very drawn to education, parenting, child development. It was just a really interesting area for me. And so it sort of ticked all the boxes.
And so then you said, right, I'm just going to start my own nursery. And you found a site and away you went. How did you make it happen? I think for my audience...
Yeah, so actually what happened was I started looking into places that I could open a nursery because where I lived at the time didn't have one, right on the doorstep. And I thought, well, this is a bit crazy. People are driving to the next town to go to the nurseries. We could start one here. So I started looking into all the ways that I could do that, which was very difficult. I had no money at all. We had nothing. We just bought our first home. We had 3 children under 5. My partner at the time was working very hard, commuting to London 14 hours a day type thing. And so, the choices were quite limited. And then as I was looking into it, I came across a nursery that was for sale, and it was rather poorly. And so, as in, it was about to close the doors basically within a matter of weeks. And so, it was sort of up for sale at a very reasonable price. So I went to see it, and it was in Horsham. It was about half an hour drive. I was living just outside of Brighton at the time. And I drove through this sort of estate of large executive homes and thought, well, this is strange. This should be killing it. This should be thriving. And went to see this little nursery in a community barn, but there was a big garden. And I really couldn't understand why it wasn't working until I walked in and I could, there were obvious things that needed improving. And so I thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. I sort of scraped the money together. I remember my partner at the time saying to me, I'm really behind you doing this, Hayley, but I do not want to lend any money against the house. It's the only thing we have. I don't want you to borrow any money against the house. Okay, fine, I'll find another way. Went to see the nursery, looked into several options, came back to him and said, right, I'm going to do the nursery and I need to borrow money against the house. And he just looked at me and said, you better make this work. And I said, I will make it work. And I think that's the only reason it did, was because failure was not an option. I mean, failure meant losing our home to our 3 children. It was just, you just worked until it worked. That was it. There was no failing.
Well,
So anyway, we've developed a group now. We've got 3 nurseries. We've got another site. We've got some plans for other sites in the future. And obviously the school that opens in September. So it's been strong growth over the last 5 years, which has been fantastic, exhilarating and exhausting and expensive. But yeah, so here we are.
Is it been hard to get this new school up and running, or how would you describe it?
What, starting a new school in an 18th century building in COVID? Yeah. No, Simon, it's been a breeze.
Thought so.
Yes, so
everyone should do it, right? Easy.
Oh yes, it's an absolute piece of cake. No, I mean, I have done nothing else 24 hours a day than kind of focus on this school and obviously my other business as well with the nurseries, but the school has been, very much a focus for the whole of the last year. And there's a team of people behind that. It's not just me. My business manager, the consultant I've been using, who's an Ofsted inspector, an ex-Ofsted inspector. all of us, the teachers that I've hired, we've been really working extremely hard to get to the place that we're at now, 6 weeks from opening. But yeah, I mean, obviously I signed the lease, a 25-year lease on this 18th century beautiful manor house building that we've got as the school, 2 weeks before COVID hit, which was a really interesting. And I mean, to be honest, thank God, because actually had it all hit, I might have doubted myself and thought, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe we shouldn't be signing the lease. We should put it off. But of course, that wasn't the case. Signed it, didn't know anything about it. 2 weeks later, COVID hit and, suddenly schools were closing. My nurseries were closing. It was insane. And of course, the challenge of just getting the builders in, the different contractors, and trying to coordinate having staff with social distancing, and it's been a huge undertaking.
I think there's a couple of points I want to make sure the audience doesn't miss in all these amazing insights and points that you're making. One of the story about your mortgaging your home and then kind of signing the lease when other people might be listening thinking, wow, you signed the lease at a bad time there, but your perception and view on it is you were lucky to sign a lease then because it's made you follow through. So it's the commitment pieces. I want people to pick up on this. I think commitment is such an important part of the journey. And so once you'd signed that lease, you were committed, COVID or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here you come. Right? So,
yeah, 100%. And
I think the mortgage, the same thing. Like once you've committed that resource, that line's been crossed. You have to make it work, and I think that's why you're successful. And I think people need to listen to that point. It is commitment. It's not necessarily putting your house on mortgage. That's not the only way commitment manifests itself. But I think that commitment piece, the lease element you explained, for example, is very important.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, it's like I said, once I tend to, once I've decided I'm doing something, we're doing it. It's a case of how long will it take to make it work. It's not a case of will we be backing out and chucking the towel in. It's just, you have your projection of how long you think it's going to take to get it to a successful point where it's stable. And it's just a case of how long will that take and what do we need to get there. It's not a case of will we be, backing out of it.
I guess it's also that charge to get to the point where you can get joy from the business, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm already getting tons of joy from the school. I have to say that, this is already a very, very fun experience because I love putting things together. So, having a lovely big 18th century manor house to decorate and make beautiful has been, a huge amount of fun anyway. But also meeting the families, meeting the children that are going to come to our school. They're just so much fun and they energize you. To be working with children and teaching, you really have to love children. And I know that sounds a bit obvious, but sometimes I worry that not everybody in teaching and education actually does love children. But for me, I just find them enormous fun. I find them very energizing and very motivating to be around. So yeah, it's already been a lot of fun. If anything, I feel like, it's more a case of getting ready for what might be coming, which is going to be more challenging actually doing it rather than talking about it and planning it.
You make me think a little bit about the homeschooling point, and I love the fact you say it's worth thinking about because so many people that own schools, you'll always be telling you about how the school system is better, and I love the idea of you kind of endorsing homeschooling, and I also like the fact that you've kind of reverse engineered your own school in this vein, that you're trying to think things differently. I think that's really, really cool. But you said something there that kind of made me think as well about how I think a lot of parents actually don't like educating their children.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the easiest thing for me to do, wouldn't it? Because I couldn't find a progressive school that I wanted my children to go to, would just be to have homeschooled. Right. And I was at a point in the business where I could have, I've got a fantastic group operations manager who's amazing, and I was at the point where I could have done that. I could have just stepped back and said, Charlotte, reigns over to you. I'm actually going to homeschool my kids, so I'm going to be, less involved. And so that would have been much cheaper for a start and a lot less stress. But it just wasn't. That's not who I am. I don't want that. I don't want that environment for my children. I want them to be in a school, but I want them to be in the right school. I want them to be with the right influences. And also, I don't want to homeschool. I don't. It's not that I don't love my children. Of course, I do. I just I love to work. I love to build things. I love to create things. And if I can do that alongside my children in my own school, well, that's a huge bonus. I mean, I'm actually going to be working in the class that my twin daughters will be in September. So I'll be a teaching partner as well as the head of school, certainly for the next year to really do it, because I have to be doing it with the other staff. Otherwise, how am I going to reflect on what's working? And so my own twin daughters will be in the class with me, and then my youngest daughter will be in the class with my wife, who's also going to be a teacher. So, that's a really privileged thing as well.
It's that you are personifying what I call work-life balance right there. I think so many people separate their life from their work, and the joy can come from combining the two, finding like you say, it's still a comfortable on a wobbly stool kind of concept, but the idea of actually, I'm working, my podcast is also from home. We look very professional with our background here, and I've got Connor who takes care of all the editing. We do a good job of making it look very professional, but actually I'm at home. And I love that, because my son sometimes runs in and joins in the podcast. He said to me this morning, "Daddy, you want my help with the podcast?" I love that inclusion piece.
Absolutely.
Which you literally built a school to create that inclusion piece, which is incredibly... it's just amazing to me, and I have a lot of respect for you. And as I say, I think I could actually talk to you all day long. I think probably now we've kept you an hour when you're busy trying to get a new school ready. So I want to say thank you for joining. I want to say I've got a million other questions for you, so maybe we can have you back on. Maybe we can come and do the podcast, not in my front living room, but at your school when you're up and running, and interview you again and hear more of your insights, and maybe even talk to some of your students. I think that could be really cute and cool.
That would be very cool.
So let's do that. But I want to thank you for your time. I want to sum up a few things that I've taken from you, which I've mentioned a few times, but I want the audience to grasp it. I love this concept of getting joy from the business. I think a lot of people think about business as a concept of bringing in money, but I like the idea of it bringing in joy. I think that's really, really interesting. I think anyone who wants to talk about mental health, welcome to approach me, this platform. I think it's important to talk about it. Everyone goes through pain when building a business, or in any part of life for that matter, and having someone to talk about can be a problem shared, problem halved. I think I do want to make quite a few t-shirts up from Hayley, which is don't worry, just work. I think on the back of get a service from time to time. I do think we're fueled by self-doubt. That's a really interesting area, which I'd like to go into a little bit more with you another time. But there's something really interesting in that statement. I think I love it when people tell me my podcast isn't going to work. It pushes me to make sure that it does.
Absolutely.
And so there's something really interesting in that ecosystem of doubt. I think more emphasis on relationships in life. I think that's one of the things, again, that's going to set you apart in a school, because I think if you can create a relationship with the children, of course, but then build the relationship with the parents, and within the parents themselves, the thing I loved about the way you've written up everything you're doing, one of the definitely things I loved was this community piece, which I think, again, is sometimes said but not done. Actually connecting everyone, having a common goal and sharing knowledge, and that community, that relationship piece, like you said quite rightly, people and relationships are key to your whole life's journey being fulfilling, and having those relationships are so important. So having that within a school system, but I think basically making sure people emphasize relationships in life, because I think they can get overlooked. Building a business, you can sometimes neglect your relationship, right? And I think getting those people on the same page as you, working in your business with you, and combining work-life balance, that's a really interesting piece there that you've unpacked a bit. And I like the point you also mentioned about alternative becoming more like progressive, so the private school or public school and a progressive school, as opposed to alternative, as if it's some weird, strange, abstract third option. And I love the idea that it's not alternative, it's progressive. So I think that's another t-shirt, or certainly a slogan. I think you're progressive. I don't think you're alternative. Although of course it's an option, so you could categorize it that way. But a progressive school I really like. And so mortgage your house, commit to it. So if it goes horribly wrong, I'll put Hayley's contact details down the bottom. If you mortgage your house and the business doesn't work, then ping her.
Yeah.
And
take more holidays than I did.
Yeah, take lots of holidays and mortgage your home. Just enjoy life a little bit. And somehow it will all work out.
It'll just be fine.
If you get joy from the business, the journey itself is enough. But thank you for your time, Hayley. I love talking to you. Look forward to coming to visit your school and hearing how it all plays out for you. But I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the kids that are going to go there and the parents that are going to be involved. And I look forward to having you back on the show. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a huge pleasure. I've enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Good Luck Club podcast. We know you have thousands of podcasts you could be listening to, and you've chosen us. We, of course, feel lucky. If you want to hear more, please go to thegoodluckpod.com or go to any of our social media pages and share with us your views, your insights, and any way that we can improve what we're doing to make it a better experience for you. We wish you the best of luck.